Hello and welcome back, artists and designers. Today we're going to talk about the inking step for our vector portraits. Whether you're doing the zombie version or the normal version, the inking is the most important step. So if you are doing the zombie version, I do have a sketch that I would utilize for this, but I'm going to turn that off at the moment, and I'm just going to have my inking layer selected here. So let's talk about the tools we'll be using. We're going to avoid using the brush simply because if you go back and try to use the eraser, it's going to reset any sort of taper that you have in the brush, and we want to get some nice taper here. So I'm going to go ahead and click and hold and use the blob brush. The quick key is Shift B. So that's going to be my go-to tool. And with that selected, I'm going to go ahead and double click on the brush. And when you double click on it, you of course have your fidelity, and that's going to be the AI correcting any sort of shakiness in your hand, so you can kind of figure out where you want it. Honestly, for this, I usually like to leave it kind of in the middle. You might want to kick it up one notch. I think if you go all the way up, it's going to be overly smooth. So I'm going to leave it maybe in the middle. For the size, this is the key ingredient. You want to make sure this is set to pressure. And I'm going to default just down here. I'm going to try like 5 and 5. So 5 points of pressure and 5 points of variation. And let's double check that and see how that works. So if I go back here and I try just tracing out part of the eye, I'm going to start with a little light pressure, press a little harder, and then lighten up on my pressure again, and that should give you a nice taper. So when I go to trace over something there, I am able to get that nice thick and thin line. So I want to start thin here, light pressure, build up, harder pressure right here, and kind of work my way through getting any of the details that I feel like I need to get in for the inking step. So everything else is set to normal. You can go in and edit the tool here, but I don't think you need to. Again, blob brush is really simple. Just double click on that and make sure that pressure is set here. Now, if you want to make your brush bigger or smaller, you can still use the bracket keys like normal. So if I hold the bracket keys down, I can get a larger, much larger brush here. It'll get a much thicker and thin line depending on the area that I'm working on. Just be cautious about making your lines too thick or too bold. You want to get some consistency overall in your image. All right, so that's the main one, is the blob brush. I think we'll work on that. The other tool that you can use, well, I'm going to show you two ways to do this actually. Let's say I go to the mouth area and I know that I want to have this kind of filled in. So I would work my way around this, maybe like this, and let's get the outline going first. So I'm going to do that. And that did an okay job. I don't know how I feel about the teeth, but that's okay. So I could go in here and make this really big and fill this whole area in, which would not be too difficult. But the cool thing about the blob brush is once you have the outer edge filled in, you can, here's a little trick we can do, is grab that selection tool. And since this is not a stroke, it is a fill, I can click on that edge, I can select it and hit delete twice, and that will fill that whole area in. So that's one big shape right there that it kind of fills in. So that's a really helpful tool if you're trying to fill in a large area. Alternatively, the other tool that we can use is also the pencil tool. So I'm going to go ahead down here to the pencil tool for a second. Oh, before I get to that, let's the eraser tool, if you want to go back and make some adjustments on anything, the eraser tool right here, I'm going to double click just like the blob brush. The pressure is down here and it is set to pressure. By default it might be fixed, so if you want the pressure sensitivity, go ahead and hit that. It's defaulting to this elliptical brush, which is okay for me, but if you'd like to modify that, whoops, you are welcome to make that more of a circle. Kind of like the ellipse, so I'm gonna stick with that. Hit OK, and then this will allow you to go in if you need to make any adjustments. You're like, oh, I didn't want to have this here. It's a little hard to see while it's still selected. I'm going to deselect that, eraser tool, and you can go through and clean stuff up with the eraser tool, and again make that bigger and smaller just like you can with the brush tool. So the eraser and the blob brush, really great ways to get started. Just be very careful with the eraser brush. That is going to erase any layer that is unlocked and visible other than an actual image. Well, actually, if the image is unlocked, no, it doesn't erase the image, so that's good. But any layer that's under this with the eraser tool, be very cautious about that. All right, blob brush and the eraser tool. All right, the other one real quick here is the pencil tool. So you can actually use the pencil tool. And same thing, I'm going to double click and we're going to go in here, decide how smooth or accurate I want this to be. I'm going to use the pencil tool to fill in large areas, but where I want to get some nice zigzag on the edge, like in a part of a hair. So I'm going to leave the accuracy pretty high. Can I do maybe one step up? I might leave it fully high right here. And I'm actually going to do fill new pencil strokes right here. And there we go. I'm going to go like that. So fill new, keep selected, unchecked, and hit OK. So now if I want to go over to the hair, and let's say I want this kind of smooth right here, but then in the hair I want to go kind of like this, and maybe I'm going to get a little bit of an edge here and close that up. That should close that area off, and it's really nice if you want to get, detailed areas that you want to fill in, but you don't want to make like necessarily a million brush strokes. You can close off large areas with the pencil tool, which is kind of helpful. Or let's say in the eye, I want to fill in an area right there. I can do that pretty easily with the pencil tool as well. So pencil tool, blob brush, and the eraser tool are going to be your kind of go-to tools during this project. Really work closely to get that taper, look at the details, try to get as much detail in there as you can, knowing that you're going to go back and add in those colored details somewhere else. Okay, so work your way around that drawing with the inking. That is probably the most important step. Hide that image every once in a while and kind of see, is your inking holding that image together, and hopefully it is. All right, most important step, folks, please work hard on that. Blob brush, pencil tool, eraser tool, this little grouping right here, and again making sure that you double click on those tools and you're checking your settings. All right, good luck, and I will see you in the next video.